All right, we are live. Edward Hertzman, welcome back to the Future of Fitness.
Thanks, Eric. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
What has it been, 2 years since our last recording?
It's been a hot minute, man. I think it's been a while. Yeah, you were really starting to pick up steam, I think, last time we got on this podcast, and you've done a lot, obviously, over the last few years. You've been grinding it out. You and I talked often, or we talk often, and man, you got a lot going on. And I respect what you built so far. You know, Athletech has become, one of the go-to resources for the industry, and you seem to keep doubling down on all the efforts and energy and time you put into this thing. So I don't know if people realize how hard you work, and I'll go ahead and give you credit for that because you and I talk often, but the B2B media landscape is not easy, right? I think that was what you and I talked about last time in our podcast when we recorded on this one. It was like, it's not, you don't just step up, build an audience and start printing cash, right? You got to put the work in. You got to build the trust. You got to get to know the industry. And, I kudos to you for what you've done so far. And I know you got a lot of big stuff coming up. You had the CEO Summit at the beginning of this year. You got the Innovation Summit coming up in June. And yeah, man, there's a lot of great stuff. So 2 years, what's been going on, Eddie? What's new?
I think the most notable difference is how much grayer you and I both are than when the last time we recorded, which is probably a sign of all those hours that we both are putting in. I mean, I think you're 100% right. I think, look, media as a whole is not like the best business to be in, right? Like it's not, and it's constantly disrupted and being disrupted. And like, if you even asked me today, my stance on how AI will impact media from even 6 months ago, I would give you a very different answer, good and bad. So yeah, I mean, I think, look, the industry is kind of spoken, right? Like they're the ones that open the emails every day. They're the one that's clicking. We well over 100,000 subscribers. We see any given month, a few extra 100,000 people coming in from search and referral. The amount of emails we get every day, people sending us press releases, 98% of them are crazy, but there's a directing. You see that. I mean, we even notice, going to events and conferences ourselves, how much easier it is now to get interviews. People are coming to us, giving us the news ahead of time, giving us the exclusives, which is a great feeling. I know our journalists feel really happy about that. One of the things they pride themselves in is being able to break a story or get a story first or get an exclusive. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff we have coming up the second half of this year. A couple of things we didn't plan on. We didn't plan on, tariffs happening and the economy softening a little bit, although today the market's, going through the roof. So that's part of that uncertainty in that bear and bull market is difficult. It creates, companies get afraid to spend. There's a paralysis in the economy. And obviously as a media company, you feel that, which is another added piece of tension that you don't plan for, but you got to keep working through. I would say that even if the economy kind of has a little bit of a downturn, I think all of us agree that fitness and wellness is going to be pretty resilient. I think what we've learned is the likelihood of someone, whether you're at Lifetime or Planet, canceling that membership is very low. And the conversations I'm having with the big developers, the big franchisee groups, the PE firms, they're still going to continue to on their growth and expansion and plan. Those are very good signs that this industry is going to continue to grow. We see a lot of deal flow happening. I think we need to find a new word. It's not the fitness industry. It's not the wellness industry. It's not the health industry. It's like whatever. There's needs to be a new umbrella term. I don't know if we'll figure it out right now. And if we do, I'm not going to publicly air it. I'll trademark it first, but like there needs to be something because a new industry is emerging here, and we're grateful to be at the intersection.
Yeah, it is. It does need a new name. I agree, and I've been thinking about this for a while because I'm tired of typing out fitness, health, and wellness. I started abbreviating FHW, and no one really knows what that means. What is that, FUA? Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. But I think there is something out there as a rebrand, and I've been talking about this for a year. And I think you and I interviewed Just Weeful at an event last year. In person, we were talking about like the whole industry feels like it's going under a mostly unconscious but somewhat conscious rebrand. Like we're just migrating into this whole health paradigm, and we're shifting how we're perceived, how we interact with our consumers or our clients, and it's super exciting. I mean, I think it is. I've been in there on this industry for 17 years, and
the only thing I would
truly
say
exciting.
Is there is a desire to rebrand. There is a desire to change the image or the actions from the industry meeting that desire. Like, are we showing up the way we need to show up? Are we aligned with what we're saying? I question, I look at when auto had an issue in '08. The 5 big CEOs get on a plane, they all went on their jets, which was a problem, the irony in that. They go to DC, you look at the inauguration, put politics aside, the tech CEOs are all there. How do we show up as an industry? How do we want to be represented? How do we want people to talk about us? I know we're tired of that old fitness stigma, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of great innovation happening. There's a lot of money flowing in. There's a lot of outside talent coming in. But I think there's work that has to be done if we really want to rebrand how we're perceived on the outside.
If you were to look at the mission that you have, is that it? Is that to help pull like the leadership of the industry together in like a unified, because I mean, you and I have talked about how, fractionized or whatever the word is, I'm not using words well today, but like how fractional everything is, it's just distributed across, not a lot of communication across the board, and little niches within niches of, boutique and health clubs and digital and all those things. But there doesn't seem to be like a connective tissue at the very top.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to the fragmentation of the industry. And
yes, thank you. Fragmentation.
Look, now it's 4 or 5 years in. Most people only think it's 2. And the old joke I say, I was emailing myself for the first 2 years. Now I kind of realize maybe why there was so little industry resources dedicated to this. A little bit harder than I thought. Not harder to build an audience. I knew I kind of had a gut feeling that, again, like I remember sitting in Vegas and sitting next to these gentlemen. They sold pepperoni. They were there for a pizza conference. There's a pizza journal, like the things like this. But why has there not been the billboard of fitness and wellness? Like, and not saying there wasn't players, but why were they not able to evolve, or why did they struggle, or where were the shortcomings? And part of it is it's very expensive to run these companies, right? And the cost of content creation keeps going up and up and up and up. Human capital costs are up and up and up. Productivity is actually down, which is why I think people are looking to supplement, the human capital with all this AI or whatnot, which is a great tool. I'm concerned about what it's going to do for the job market. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm sure for some people it's going to be a boom, and for some it's going to be a bust. You're very quickly realizing, probably feel like our parents did when the computers came out. Like, we're at this weird age where now we have to start teaching ourselves all this new stuff to still be relevant. And the pace of change is so fast. Like it is remarkable how if you are not on this, every single day, you're going to be left behind. And I think that's the thing that companies are not realizing. It's like, if you are not moving forward, if you are not learning every single day. I mean, one of my favorite books, Andy Grove, Only the Paranoid Survive. I wake up every single day and I say to myself, if I wanted to start a business to put myself out of business, what would I do? And then I better go and do it, because if I don't, someone else is going to be doing it. It's a great question to ask an executive, because a lot of times I'll say, Eric, what would you do differently? And then you start rambling off answers. And I'm like, bro, why are you not doing that then? If you really believe that's what it would take to put you out of business, someone else is doing it. And so I kind of take that stance. And the hard thing here is, I think when we're building a business, I'm using a framework which already exists, but we're taking a big bet in June, a big bet on this innovation summit. I'm extremely excited. I'm extremely passionate, but it's a bet because, again, you can't comp off of nothing. So I don't know what the industry's response is going to be. I know they're going to love it, but loving something and it being profitable, two very different things. You know what I mean? So, and then what are people willing to pay for something? That's a whole nother conversation as well.
Let's start with this, because we're going to get to the Innovation Summit in a minute. You had the CEO Summit. I think it's the second year, right? The NASDAQ event.
Yeah.
Let's carve into that, because I feel like that partially, and correct me if I'm wrong, is inspiration for this bigger event in June, right? If something sparked, you're like, okay, I think there's something else I can do here, something bigger. So run us through that. How do those take place? What happens at those events? What was the turn?
Well, the first year was kind of, again, like a little bit of serendipity, getting asked to ring the bell for the Wellness Week, and 100, 150 top executives. I mean, on a Friday, I'm like, maybe my accountant will show up. I mean, 2 days later, we had 100 people, and some of the biggest CEOs and executives came, and it was a great photo op. I mean, candidly, it was a great press moment for us. The amount of impressions that we saw on social media was phenomenal. We got asked to come back the next year. I didn't think that was enough. So I'm like, okay, let me tie into my previous experience, and let's do a CEO summit. And that is a very intimate gathering. And I knew that we needed to bring some outside voices. We needed to bring people that were not usually on the scene. We needed to take the speakers who would normally be on the stage, get them into the audience, basically get rid of the whole buy-sell equation, make everyone unequal, and see what would happen. And very easy to say, very, very hard to do. Because it's very hard to tell someone that's used to not going to an event, and now you're going to go and be in the audience. Whoa, that's a big hit to the ego. But what you realize is the people in that room really learned a lot from each other. Part of the content was personal development. Part of the content was this personal interest. We had Dr. Littman, a great OG of functional medicine. Like, he's not pushing a product. So he's not there under the banner of here's my franchise, here's my supplement, here's my this. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with that, but he's just telling you he's microdosing GLP-1s, he's microdosing Cialis, he's microdosing this. Look, whoa. They're lining up to talk to this guy. Like, what do you mean? Oh, this is bullshit. Like, don't do this. You're wasting your money. Like, because it was completely candid. You had Mags and Catterton telling you, this is a good investment. This was a bad investment. I'm not so sure about this. I'm bullish on this. People are like, wow. Like this is really kind of unfiltered. And I think it was refreshing that people didn't feel like they were going in and out trying to be sold to, and they could learn something. And I knew that if we created it, see, it's funny, you build it, they will not come. You have to force it to happen. And I knew if we forced it to happen, people would see value. And a lot of people were talking about it. Look, but the hard part then is, how do you scale that? Right now, you can only have 100 or 200 people in that moment. So we knew that we have to keep the integrity of that event for the future. We need to have a different moment where it could be a little bit bigger, but the same premise. And that's really where the Innovation Summit is coming to fruition. And again, other industries do this. Other industries have CEO gatherings, whether it's retreats, whether it's small meetings, whether it's councils, and then they have these bigger conferences and summits. But I think it's a different, when people hear this and I explain it, it sounds like every other event, but it's a very different experience if done right.
So walk me through that. If this all plays out the way that you're planning, what is my experience? What is the, just because I was just chatting with him, the CEO of 45, Tom Dowd, how is his experience different?
So, well, let's talk about that. Right off the bat, I call it the buffet effect. You can't throw 500 people in one room and expect them to have a good outcome. A buffet has a lot of food, but nothing's really that great, So what Tom's going to want from an event is very different than his CMO Brian's going to want. And is very different than his CRO Luke's going to want. And is very different than his head of partnerships is going to want. And is very different than his CTO is going to want. And his head of legal is going to want. Think about each of those people, their daily jobs, and what they need to do every single day. And their head of procurement. So the head of procurement may be really interested in finding out about the newest red light bed or the newest techno gym or a partnership with Red Bull or a meeting with Dr. B. Tom, he may be sitting with his investor colleagues or fellow CEOs and talking about the state of affairs. The CMO may be going to hear the Sports Innovation Lab speak or McKinsey speak or, a company like a VaynerMedia speak, because that's a very different lens, The head of, someone may want to hear about what other franchisors are doing or similar modalities because they want to understand where they sit from a competitive landscape, from a collaborative landscape. So it's a very much choose your own adventure. And I think that my goal is when each of those people leave, they're each going to say the event was very different to that. There's going to be certain sessions. I'm sure everyone's going to have a general interest in hearing Gary Brackett speak and people like that. But for the most part, I think it's going to be very individualized if done right. So
how do you do that? Is there a track, right? As me as a media creator, right? Am I going to be is there certain areas that I'm going to want to be at? Is there roadmap for me to get through the event?
Not year one, because again, I don't know enough, and I'm being very frank, and I don't know if I should be being this frank on a live event, but I don't know enough where I want to say, hey, these are the 5 things you want to go to, because you may have an interest in X, Y, and Z. I don't know. Maybe you have a partnership with a hospitality or a hotel or a cruise ship coming up that I'm not aware of. And so you may want to go to those hospitality panels. But again, I don't think too many people have heard the International Luxury Hotel Association. Barack is going to have a very different perspective because he's representing the luxury segment. And the Global Wellness Institute, we quote them every single day. We all do. People think, whoa, is that competitive? Well, maybe. But why not bring the people, the CEO on the stage that's doing that has research and data that we're all referencing? I think we all can learn from that. I can learn from that. So in that respect, I don't look at that as competitive. I've looked at that as putting the best minds in the room together. We have the Washington Post moderating. We have other media outlets moderating. We have other media outlets coming to attend and cover it. My hope is that this event is bigger than Athletech. The idea is, now I know that these people could cover it and never reference me. And I'm okay with that. That's not what I want. I want people to say, at the ATN Innovation Summit, June 17th, so-and-so spoke about XYZ. But again, it's the mentality of building the industry up, making it bigger than just, I think that's a problem. We try to be too contained. We need more collaboration like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a very competitive industry since I've been in it. CrossFit's up against F45 and boutique versus, HVLP and, all these different categories, and everyone wants to know who's winning within the industry. And the fact of the matter is I don't know who was it Geisler who said this in an interview, we're competing with the couch, right? That's as an industry.
Well,
that's who we're competing against.
If you ask, in the HVLP space, is price really the friction? Price is always probably the number one friction when you do a survey. That's what they'll say. And the price of gyms have gone up, and the price of gyms probably will continue to go up if we see, we saw some relief on the tariffs today, but cost of building materials are going up, cost of equipment's going up, even capital is going up. Yeah, I think to his point, their biggest competitor is the couch, because it's not the $15 or the $20 that's the friction. It's I don't want to go. I have no incentive to go. That's a personal choice someone has to make. Yeah, look, I think that there's a big enough consumer base for many of these businesses to succeed. If anything, unlike, let's say, retail, where I come from, where it's if you're not selling to a Walmart, or you're not selling to a TJ Maxx, or you're not, selling to Macy's or Costco, you don't have enough critical mass because a lot of those mom and pop stores are gone. You could still be, I think you could still be an equipment company and sell to thousands of locations and not be in some of the big guys and still be very, very successful. You could also have 20, 30 regional locations and be remarkably profitable and remarkably successful. You may not make the front pages of Franchising Today or Times or whatever, or Fast Company, but I think that's something that we as a publication want to do more about is, you look at some of these companies, you look at a CR Fitness. I think it's either the largest or one of the largest crunch groups. You got 70, 75 on the road to 80. You know the size of that business? Operating 75 crunches profitably? That is actually bigger than some of the brands you and I interview on Unscripted. And they're a sub-brand, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of unsung heroes that probably deserve more ink and more exposure that never get talked about. The problem is there's a lot of attention being paid to people that maybe don't deserve it necessarily, but they yell really loud. They're screaming from the top of the roofs. They attend all the events. So there is a lot more success stories than you would think. But look, I feel like the industry is finally starting to come out of the COVID, right? And again, up until today, what I would explain the economic environment right now is COVID without the mask. Doesn't look like there's a problem, but there's a big problem. You basically have a trade embargo with the manufacturer in the world, and the fitness industry buys the majority of their equipment there. So that's paralysis.
Well, there's a lot of converging factors, and why I think this event is timely, and this conversation is very timely. And I hear a lot more of these types of conversations coming on too. And we have post-COVID, right? We can just state that we're out of COVID. There is a bigger concentration on personalized health and wellness, the consumer wants it, right? And they're starting to see that, they have to be advocates for their own health. And then you're starting to see the political will is brewing in a very, very strong way, which is, I know, something that you're going to cover at the event as well. And so there's a lot of things converging. And I think when you look at the summit itself, when you look at the speakers and the people you have, the curation of the event, what are the big buckets that you're hoping to fill?
It's a lot. There's a lot of content happening. If anything, maybe we overprogrammed it. I think we have 75 to 100 speakers, 30 sessions. It's a lot. There's certain themes that are going on, right? Right now, HVLP is really, that is a category is doing really, really well. Okay. I think if we look at Connected, people like to write them off or like to, speak ill of them. But I'm like, hey guys, you need to control your own narrative. You need to get on the stage. And whether it's the chief product officer of Peloton or the CEO of Tonal or the CEO of Hydro, Why don't we hear from them how they're reinventing their businesses, how they're reimagining it in a post-COVID world, what it looks like? Because I would disagree that connected is dead. We have never been more connected. My bed is connected. My watch is connected. This water bottle is telling me I'm thirsty right now. There's 100,000 apps that are connected. So it's not that connected is gone. It's some of these business models. They were derived during a time when everyone thought the whole world was going to stay home, never leave, and we're all going to never go to the gym again. It's not one or another. It's an and, not an or. So what does that mean? McKinsey is going to be doing a presentation, which is amazing, and Catterton's going to be joining them. They have the thesis that there's going to be massive consolidation in the industry. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe some of these players need to come together. Maybe there's going to be more M&A, more deal flow. Again, like one of the things that I'm hearing about is how fitness and wellness is reimagining residential, hospitality, corporate. So again, when we think about fitness, what we have to get out of is that it's a gym and a treadmill. If you're building a luxury building, whether it's in Delray or Fifth Avenue, that's an amenity now. When you think about travel, and Barack said this to me, the president of the International Hotel Association, you have to figure out there's two things in hospitality tourism. There are places like Canyon Ranch, and they'll be speaking, that you go to get healthier, whether it's a longevity retreat, whether it's a perimenopause or a menopause retreat, or just, going away for the weekend and you want to feel better when you leave. Now, if you and I go on a business trip for 5 days, we don't want to come back home feeling worse than when we came. So our expectation of that a hotel is that they're going to have a fitness facility that will allow me to continue working out like I do back at home. But what does that mean? Does that mean tonals? Does that mean red light beds? Does that mean strength training? Does that mean car? So why don't we hear from the people that are actually building it out? I could pontificate on it, but let's hear from the operators. Let's hear from the developers. Again, if I move into a new building, my expectation is that building's going to have a really great gym facility in there. Well, let's hear from the Archimedes of the world that are actually building it out. Let's not leave it to guessing.
Who are the big draws for the event, Eddie? I mean, you mentioned Gary Brecka, right? Anthony Geisler's been announced. Like, who do you think are the biggest names, and who are people most interested in coming to see? Because I think there's all of this sounds super interesting, right? But people don't know that they want it until they sit down and they listen to these people talk about like different parts of the industry that they haven't discovered yet, right? Different opportunities that they didn't know existed. But what do you think are the big ones that are going to draw people in, so then you can teach them everything or show them everything that you want to show them?
As long as I've been doing these events, which are 15 years now, sometimes the biggest companies say the least and the smallest names actually say the most. Now, this is not an industry that's largely publicly traded, so they're not as many guardrails. Like, a lot of times people get up there and they read a script about it, which is very similar to their earnings call. And you're like, okay, well, that wasn't really that exciting. And then some independent, operator or retailer tells you all these things. You're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe how candid, he or she was. And I think you're going to see some of that here. But, everyone's very curious what Anthony Geisler up to, is because, whatever you may think of him, he's a great entrepreneur. And an Expo is a big success story in the industry. So whatever his 2 or 3.0 is going to be is if you're an investor, you're interested. If you're a franchisee that's looking to expand, you're interested. If you're, again, how many partnerships did Expo have? He's a rainmaker. And so there's this intellectual curiosity. Media, it has curiosity over what that person is doing. Yeah, again, Gary Brecka. I'm not here to say I agree or disagree with his science. I mean, he's remarkably successful and he has a huge following. I wouldn't put someone up on the stage that I didn't personally believe in, but huge draw. But again, it could be Dr. Gabrielle Shepard. Companies now are not just making claims, they have science-backed or medically backed claims. So she works for Hims and Hers, PVOL. Why are these companies having chief science officers, chief medical officers? Why does the YMCA, with Dr. Gloria, people love hearing from her. Tanya Elliott. So these are 3 people that I think are huge draws for people that are interested in that side of the business, that are thinking about how they should engage with the science and the medical community in their businesses. If I'm an equipment person, I may be very, very interested in what the hospitality panels have to say, because that's a growth area for me. I think, I saw Josh Walker in the Sports Innovation Lab speak, and I saw the whole room take pictures. Because and it's a little, and I say this with all due respect, he probably knows more about your customers than you know. Because when you got 70 or 100 million credit card transactions and he puts up a slide of okay, the person that wears Whoop is doing this and the person that does Aura is doing this. And like you realize it's two very different personas. Where the person that goes to this type of boutique is 8 times more likely to go on Delta than United. If I'm a marketer, I'm like, well, maybe I need a partnership with Delta. And oh, wow, why are the fanatics in the Major League Sporting teams paying millions and millions of dollars for this type of information? They're not careless with their money. Is because they want to know exactly what their customer is doing so they could show up and meet them where that customer is. This industry, their number one pain point is new customers and retention of customers. And we'll have segments on that too. And that doesn't mean send an automated email that says, Eric, I haven't seen you in a week. Yes, those are things you need to do, but that's not the same old conversation we're going to have. So people like that, maybe you don't know who that is, but I promise you when you hear him talk, okay, what's interesting? Like people like to talk about, everyone knows a Solid Core story. Massive success story this year, $600 million exit to Catterton. Great. This is not a how I built it event. There's plenty of podcasts for that. What I want to know from Ann, and she has the gentleman who backed her. He's at a different firm now, but he was the firm wrote the check. And I don't know the exact size, when she was 10 locations or 20 locations, and she needed that 10 million. That's where I think there's a lot more people in that seat right now that got 10 or 20 locations that how do they get to 500 or 1,000? Once you're at 500 or 1,000, there's a lot more people. If you're profitable, you're gonna the Leonard Greens and the Blackstones and the Catterton, they'll find you. What do you do when you're like 20 locations? You believe you have a path to 100. Who's writing those checks? How do you get the attention? That's what I want Ann to talk about. We all know the other story. We all know Barry's was sold to Princeton, but we don't really know what happened between North Castle and Princeton and the negotiations and what it take and what the valuation was. And I think we're going to see a lot of radical transparency. I believe you'll see North Castle and JJ in Princeton be very honest about that deal. And that we could learn from that. Because then if I'm running a business and I'm thinking about raising or selling or partnering, there's something to take away from that. And I want to add for the people that are listening and like, well, I don't need that. I already know everything. I'm like, why does the smartest people in the world go to Davos? Like, does Bill Gates really need to learn anymore? Does he need any more money? But the smartest minds go because they want to not only better themselves, but they want to better their companies. They want to better their industries. And there needs to be some pre-competitive collaboration. Maybe the person you're sitting next to, who you thought of yesterday was a competitor, could be a partner. Is there a monetary benefit? Is there a media benefit? Is there an audience benefit? I don't know. But if you don't have that open mind, if you're of the opinion that I'm doing it all right now, I don't care what industry you're in. It's like I said, only the paranoid survive. It's a flaw. So I think I'm hoping that when June 19th, when people look back at this, they're like, this was a different type of event.
I love it.
This is something that I need to mark on my calendar every single year because this was not, again, when you see Solid Core speaking and Orange Theory speaking and Sweat House, this is not why Orange Theory is great or why Solid Core is great or why Sweat House is great. That's what people may be thinking right now. And maybe I'm doing a bad job marketing it. The reality is those three are going to argue. Matabolic's going to join them. The great debate, corporate owned versus franchise owned. It's not about contrast therapy being hot. What is the quickest path to scale? What requires more capital? What allows you to be more agile? What makes you more beholden to private equity? I don't know. I already know what a lot of them are going to say. I've been doing prep calls for 2 months, but that is a different conversation than Pilates is hot. We've heard that already. We don't need Brian to talk about that. We need Brian to talk about something else. That's what I think this event's going to be. Ann is not going to talk about why Solid Core is worth $600 million. You know what I mean? Catterton is not going to get up there and say why eGym is great. We already know they're great. So there's other platforms for that. We need to have more honest, transparent conversations around this industry. If we want to move it forward, and at the top of the call, like I said, people keep saying that to me, so I'm responding to what they asked for.
17 years I've been in this industry, and this is the most excited I have been for the state of where we're going as a whole. Right? I think the opportunities right now are tremendous. And I think if people can't feel that, I mean, all the stuff you're talking about is refreshing and new. Like I've done a lot of events over the last 4 years, right? Obviously, I'm in the thick of trends and stuff like that. I've probably heard more about trends in the industry than, maybe less than you, but more than most people on average. But the opportunity to hear something refreshing and new, and I think I use it with a little bit of refrain, is inspiration, right? For like, okay, where are the bigger ideas? How can we be expanding our thought process and our purview of what we can actually do within this industry? And I think it's really, really keen. And, we barely talked about the political will of the country at this point and the people that are getting put into major positions within the government. Now, I want to shift a little bit because this is a question I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, Eddie. You get insights into what type of content our industry likes to read, right? The topics and things like that. Like, what are people right now consuming the most of, right? Like, what types of articles? Is it trends? Is it interviews? Is it specific topics? And then what surprises you that they're not consuming more of that you wish they did? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, look, it gets thrown off a little bit because you never know who's going to pick up a story. If there's a third party that picks it up and then it kind of spikes or goes viral over the weekend. We did an interview with Lauren Cody, the president of Orange Theory. Super hot last week. We did an article about the state of HVLP. Super hot. We did it unscripted with Anthony Geisler. Super hot. Top 3 stories of the week. I think what it probably would be less surprising to you, it's the biggest brands and the biggest names that drive the most consistent traffic. And we're B2B, and so that's not surprising. Gym is a clinic. You could put wellness. We joke, you could put wellness in any headline, and that's like you Kim Kardashianize it. Like it's like this somehow just more clicks if you don't. But also, look, it's a media business, right? Like you could write, and I don't want to. I talk to my editors a lot about this. Is that sometimes how you create a headline will determine how well that article does. Now you got to have the content to support that. But I also think this is an industry that doesn't know what they need to read. It doesn't know. And that's part of what I'm saying. Like you may not think, oh, let me hear what Sports Innovation Lab has to say.
That's the core of my question.
And so that's where you have to constantly refresh it, reserve it. Again, you have a great email and 40% open it. 60% of your audience hasn't seen it. So what are you doing to recirculate that content? That's what people don't think about. And I'm really trying to get my team around is how do we constantly, repurpose this content in short form and long form and audio and video so that you get more out of it? How do you link things together? You see sometimes articles that are 2 months old coming to be the top 5 of the week. And, I want to go back just on one thing that I want to add, because when we spoke about the summit, and this is like an indirect answer, it's like we're talking about content, right? What is popular? I look at our innovation lounge and our wellness lounge as content. I don't look at it as a trade show. I don't look at it as an expo. I don't look at it as a booth. I look at it as content. But what do I mean by that? How many events do you go to that you've seen the escape machine there? The answer is probably 0. How many events have you seen the immortal machine? They're less, but it's super cool. It's innovative. It's hot. How many times have you been able to try some new techno gym, part of their healthness collection? Or how many times have you been able to get your biological age checked at an event? Have you been able to do brain mapping? This is highly curated. And so what I mean is, I think that this is not just, I'm going to write another order for the squat rack. There's events that exist for that purpose, and they do an exceptional job of this. We are curating and putting together some of the most innovative companies and products and services in an intelligent way where I believe in between certain sessions, okay, I want to see the 9, I want to see the 11. You're going to run down there and say, hey, I want to see what Skellcore's up to. Hey, I want to see what is this new eGym product? Or what is this immortal machine? Can I get on there? Oh, I want to meet with Becoming. What type of new contrast therapy is it that's, and so how do we bring products to the market that you may not already be aware of or you have a hard time getting in front of? And I think that's going to be very cool and different. So again, when you see 2 stages, 75 speakers, 30 exhibitors, it sounds like the same old. But again, what separates a Picasso from a 5-year-old putting his hands on a piece of paper? The canvas is the same. It's what you create with that canvas. It's just the box is there. It's the white walls. I think we're going to produce something very special. It's going to feel different.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited, man. I've been talking about it quite a bit. It's, June 17th to 18th, right? In New York City. And of course you're doing it in New York. Like it's very Athletech to have a big New York
event. I also think, here's the challenge of this industry. If I said I'm doing a financial services event and did it in New York, I'd have 70% of the industry within a cab ride or a train ride away. If I said a fashion event, I'd have 50, 60%. There is not one city that you and I could pick on the map right now that could get even a third of the industry in one place within 15 or 30 minutes or an hour. So that becomes a destination. We've been to a lot of West Coast events this year. I also think New York just has a sense of seriousness to it. It's a sense of hustle. It's a sense of business. It's fast paced. And there's that energy that I want to kind of resonate through 2 days. Will it move to another city? Maybe it stays in New York, but it's certainly not for economic reasons doing it in New York. It's rather expensive. There's something like, this New York has a feeling that you can't describe.
Oh man, I love New York. I could never live there, Eddie. You know that. I would suffocate. But coming from where I live out to New York once or twice a year, love it. Huge fan. I think it's fantastic. And it's a lot of fun, man. The food's great. Energy's high. There's so much shit to do. And I think this is going to bring, I think you're right.
You got to remember that there's a lot of modalities and a lot of businesses that exist here that a lot of people in this country or outside the world want to see. So we're working on partnerships with the City Pickle and other ships and stuff like that, so that you're going to have the ability to try these things out. And even if we don't necessarily do an event with them, there's still so many places you can go to make this trip worthwhile. When people come to New York, they don't come for 2 days. They come for 3-4 days. They set up meetings. They set up client meetings. They meet friends. They visit businesses. Like, this is a city where you can get a lot of stuff done. And so I think that you got to make the most out of it, though. You got to make the most out of what New York has to offer. You got to make the most out of who's going to be in the room. You're going to see probably the largest concentration of PE and VC and family offices than any other event. I can't get them to write the check for you. You're going to see some of these great vendors. You got to figure out how it makes sense to incorporate that into your business. You're going to hear some cool concepts. Maybe it's relevant for you. Maybe it's not. You're going to hear the Sports Innovation Lab. What you do with that information, it's up for you to decide. I get inspired by people like that because it makes me think, wow, how do I apply that to my business? How could I do a better job serving my readers? And think about it. I'm in a business where I have data on, to your point, every article they're reading. So it really makes me think about understanding your customer and how to re-engage them. And maybe I got to show up in places that we're always thinking about, do we go to Meta or do we go to Google? Maybe you got to think about targeting our audience in a completely different way.
Last question for you, Eddie. You got into this industry, 5 years ago when you were just writing emails to nowhere, essentially. And now you have a pretty substantial platform per the industry. As you've dug deeper and deeper, now you're about waist deep in what we do here. What surprised you? Is there anything, one or two things that caught you by surprise, things that you didn't expect?
The opportunity is the challenge. The fragmentation of this industry allows a lot of people to survive, a lot of people to be successful, but it also is very challenging to bring people together. I think I got to use my words really carefully here. For a mission-driven industry, there's a lot less collaboration than I would have thought. People are really in their own little world. And I'm surprised there's not more pre-competitive collaboration, helping each other, learn from each other. Again, every industry kind of has it, and it's like, whoa, this person's going to speak. Why would they not speak? Why would they not? Well, why would they share? Why would they not share? You know what I mean? It's like, there's plenty of places for them to compete. I keep using this saying, like, at the top you collaborate, at the bottom you compete. Just because someone says, we have a partnership with XYZ doesn't mean I can pick up the phone and get a partnership tomorrow with them. That's not proprietary information. I open up a magazine and I see Rolex advertising in GQ doesn't mean, oh my God, now I can start a men's magazine and get Rolex. Like, you got a lot of work to do between that. But hearing these stories, you don't know who you're going to meet. You know what I mean? You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what's going to inspire you. You don't know what little thing you're going to walk away with that's going to make you think differently. And sometimes it's affirmation. Sometimes, I was questioning myself, but after hearing this, maybe I'm on the right track. And that is also benefit and value too. Sometimes we second guess ourselves and we need to hear from someone else. And so there's a lot of different ways to apply value to something. I think that's what's hard about this industry is that, like, they think about marketing in a very binary way. Like, I spend $1, do I get something? And I'm like, I never bought a car off a TV a commercial, and I don't read the Wall Street Journal and be like, hey, I'm on page 32. I like to purchase what you're selling. I've never done that before. I don't think anyone has. How many touch points do we have to see every single day before we ultimately make a purchase? And hey, my lease is not up for 2 years. If the auto industry is still targeting me every day, I just bought a new Srixon driver last year. Callaway didn't say, let me stop advertising for Eddie for 5 years because I think that's the lifetime value of a driver. That's the thing. It's like, I don't think Coca-Cola has a brand marketing problem. I think everyone knows what Coca-Cola is, yet why do they market so much? Again, like I brought up Rolex. You can't even buy a Rolex. Yet every time you turn on golf and tennis and these sporting events, they were there. Why? And yet a lot of people in this industry, and this is not this industry's problem. I've done this a couple times across different sectors. They think everyone knows who they are. As much as a lot of people in the industry read us, there's more people in the industry that probably don't know Athletech than do. That is how I wake up every single day and say, it could be another 100,000 or 200,000 or 500,000. And you know what? I got to make sure that if someone else comes on the scene, how do I keep those 100 and find the next 100 or the next 100? Again, I'm like a paranoid, crazy person. But I think that if you do not think like that in your own business, think about it, Eric. You have this, you do a lot of work in podcasts. The friction to starting a podcast is zero.
Mm-hmm.
We could turn this on today and it's the Eddie and Eric show. The value that we have is almost, it's becoming less about the content and more about the distributionists than the audience. So yes, you have to have great content, but a lot of people can create great content today. Some of the best movies ever created are never seen because they can't get a distribution deal. I'm sure there's plenty of hot #1 songs that are never going to make it out of the bedroom. So what's more important? Having a great idea that no one talks about? Sometimes a mediocre idea that everyone talks about is more successful.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Eddie, it's always a pleasure, man. I always pull a lot out of these. Where do you want people to go? Athletechnews.com obviously has a lot of information about the summit. People want to reach you.
I mean, there's a lot of takeaways. Like I said, there's more people we don't know than we do know. You know a lot of people, but if you're listening and you got a great concept or you're a franchisee or you got a great product, we want to keep learning. You're managing a hospitality chain. We constantly need to keep reinventing ourselves. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Send me an email. If you're not already signed up, sign up. It doesn't cost you anything. If anything, it's costing me to serve you content every day. So sign up. If you like what you heard and you want to be a better version of yourself, if you want to take your business to the next level, send your CMO, send your CTO, send your head of procurement, send your COO. I think 500 or 600 or 700 of the top industry executives are going to be there. I imagine that they already are seeing the value that, or they perceive the value they're going to get out of that. So, you'll be in very good company. Go to athletechnews.com. You'll see a tab for the Innovation Summit. Love to have you. Price is the friction. Send me an email, figure it out. You got an idea, you want to email Eric and I. We'll put you on the show. Unfortunately, in this business, every day you got to go back to zero and hit the press. There's no set menu.
It's a grind, but it's fun. I can round this out. I think in the B2B media space, and you and I have talked about this a lot, it's so much about relationships, right? And I mean, it's fundamentally about relationships in the business that we do. It's not just the content. That's a driver to get people more connected and get us more connected with the people we want to talk to. And it's a really good time. It's a very challenging time. We didn't even get into this, but the media overall as an industry is changing so rapidly. But I think if you continue to look at the value from not just the surface layer of the content, but the relationships and the connections and the things you can do for people, really truly understand your value in B2B media, then you can still be very successful and you can be very agile as things shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, I think of when I think of the media landscape, right? This has nothing to do with Athletech. B2B will be the most resilient. Caveat is B2B is probably small, like compared to cable TV or compared to, consumer media. AI can't replace two people getting together and meeting in person. Or I said this to my team recently, what AI is going to do in some weird enigma way, it's going to make, while it's replacing journalists, it's actually making the better journalists more relevant. Because now if you actually could get sources on the phone, you actually have a point of view, you actually could create something and not regurgitate a press release. That's going to be really, really valuable. Anyone could take a press release, throw it into AI and say, I'm the Eddie's Fitness blog. Very little value in it. So now the better have to get even better. When everyone's a publisher, everyone's a music creator, everyone's a content creator. How do you create audience? Not easy to create audience. You and I know that really, really well, like all too well, how hard it is to build an audience. You know, it's, I don't know if I love the business, but it's the life I chose.
Well, we'll end it at that. Eddie, I'm looking forward to it. The event's less than a month away. Hopefully the weather's beautiful in New York, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited.
And even if it's not, it's inside. So that's no excuse. The roof is quite stable. Bring an umbrella. Wipe your feet off at the front door.
Thanks for joining me, Eddie. Looking forward to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Hertzman.
Thanks.